Yeah.
Here's an example. Right now, 2023, 11,000 miles. That is the MSRP of the vehicle. It's going for MSRP today. Hey everyone, welcome back to Gear Glazers. I'm Kyle, and this is Mike, aka Micmac. And today we're answering the question, what are some cars you can drive for free?
What do you mean by that?
So what we mean by drive for free is the cost of ownership, right? Because so many people, when they think about buying a car, they think about their monthly payment, they think about the total cost of the vehicle in terms of like literally the sticker price of the car. But what they're not thinking about enough is that when you buy the car and then get out of the car a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, there is a total cost of ownership. So if you can make that total cost of ownership $0, then you drive your car for free. Simply put, if I pay $600 a month for a car and get that all back when I sell it, I drove the car for free.
When I'm thinking of what car I can drive for free, I'm essentially thinking of something that's such a good deal that it's like, ridiculous. So even if it's not necessarily free, even if you come out of it paying, a few $1,000s in taxes, or you lost, 2% on depreciation or something, I'm still counting that, because at the end of the day, your cost of ownership was less than the lease price for a Toyota Corolla.
Yep. So it's free or close to free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because that's how we talk about it, that's how we think about cars, but so many people go into a dealership and leave just with a monthly payment.
Yeah, and it sucks because you can have a car 2, 3, 4 times as nice and pay less money than you had for the worst car.
Frequently, the cars that you're going to get are significantly nicer because that's why they're so in demand.
Other people want them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, let's get into it. I know there's one car at the top of our minds because you literally did this.
Yeah. So we can talk about that one first. It's a great example.
Yeah.
The C8 Z06.
Yeah.
So this is an example of a car you can drive for money.
Yeah, right?
You can actually get paid to drive this car.
What did they say at the dealership? They said it's like you drove it off the lot with a gold brick in the backseat.
Yeah. So this is an example of a car that is in extremely high demand. What you had to do to drive this car for free or to make money was to know that it was going to be in extremely high demand, which, let's be honest, wasn't too hard to guess. We saw the C8 come out. We saw what happened with that. We heard rumors about what the Z06 was going to be, and you put money early on a list and you're going to be fine. So I put my money down 3.5 years before I got my car. I put my money down way before Chevy even announced that they were going to make a C8 Z06. We had no concrete ideas about what it was. But you didn't have to put your deposit down that early in order to get one of these cars. You could have put it down 2 years before, and maybe you would have paid a little bit of a markup, or maybe you would have just had to wait a little while, because now they're selling these cars at MSRP, and they have been for about 6 months, maybe a little bit more than that. And so if you were on a list, you could have waited long enough to be MSRP and you'd be in one.
It's also interesting to note that you knew there was going to be a C8 Z06 because there's been a Z06 for every Corvette for the past 3 generations. And when you put that deposit down, you can ask for it back at any point. It's not like they're going to keep it. Like, if you ever want to get off that list, or if you ever need that money,
it's fully refundable.
You can get that deposit refunded, and especially if Chevy doesn't end up releasing the car that you thought they were going to release. So really, this is like, yes, you need to put some money down, and there's some risk associated with that because, money has value in terms of interest gained or investment opportunities and things like that. But it's really low risk comparably because it is refundable.
Absolutely. And what you have to do is you just can't fall in love with the cars. You got to keep a close eye on the market. One thing that the C8 Z06 we still have to find out is the production. This is going to be a big thing about these cars that you're driving for free. You want low production numbers. You want low supply, high demand. It's really as simple as that. And so the C8 Z06 is continuing to be made. Although the market is softening, so is the number of people who can afford one. And so we'll have to see if supply outpaces demand. It has not yet. It could happen. And you just want to make sure that you're out of the car before that happens.
Yeah, that's the best bet. And I'd say the sweet spot for this is a year or less. Try to turn this around in a year, because at the worst case scenario, most of these cars will be able to eat a year of depreciation in the increased value.
Yeah, and again, you're trading cars every year to 2 in the best case scenario usually, and you're hopping in out of another one.
Yeah,
and you're keeping it relatively free, or like we said, close to free.
So an important thing about getting a car at MSRP is that you have to put that deposit down at multiple dealerships.
So if it's a very high demand car, it can help to put it down at multiple dealerships. Like obviously what I did with the Z06 is, first of all, I found high volume dealers. So you want to find dealerships that are moving a lot of cars. If you're down at your dealership down the street and they're going to get one car a quarter, then it doesn't really help you because that's going to be the owner and the owner's son. You know what I mean? Like, so you're going to want to be on the list for a dealership that has a high volume. The other thing is you're going to want to be on a list for a dealership that has guaranteed you that they're not going to sell the car above MSRP. Even the ones that guarantee that if the car is hot enough will flip that script. About half of the list I was on, they ended up saying they were going to sell it at MSRP, even though they promised everyone that they weren't. But this can help.
Yeah.
And I was able to get the car at MSRP, so you definitely got to make sure that you're on dealerships that promise that.
Yeah, so it's not a perfect science. You know, getting a car that is being marked up by $10,000, $15,000 at MSRP is going to be a challenge.
Yeah,
But-
and again, CS06 was 100K over when it came out.
Yeah,
We're
no,
talking
that was
extreme
absurd.
cases.
Yeah.
You're not going to see this usually.
Yeah, of course. That was a crazy case. And it's going to be similar for the ZR1 for sure. Another car I have in that vein that's a little less risky in terms of investment is the Civic Type R.
Yeah, the Civic Type R is a really interesting one. And I guess we can kind of jump back and forth between these two because there's a great juxtaposition here. This car's going to be a lot cheaper. It's also going to have a markup, but you can apply the same strategies that we applied for the C06 to come back to the Civic Type R.
Yeah.
How long can you drive this thing for free? Because with the C8 Z06, it's question mark.
Yeah.
We don't know. But if you had this thing for a year, you are good to go. Because remember, you buy this thing brand new, and you're able to flip this thing for probably, when the car first comes out, 60 grand over. Give it a couple more months, 40 grand over. Drive it for a few, 1,000 miles, 30 grand over. And so the goal is to be able to drive this car for a year for free. Maybe a year and a half, but at least a year for free, under 5,000 miles or around that 5,000 mile mark. Where are you coming in with the Civic?
So the Civic MSRP is $44,795, and dealerships are marking these things up to like 60 grand. But I've seen on the aftermarket 1-year-old Civic Type R's with the average, $12,000 miles on them that you would acquire from driving them daily for a year, going for $46,700. So that's still $2,000 over MSRP for a 1-year, well-used, well-loved Civic Type R. So there's the capacity to drive it maybe a little longer than a year. Maybe when you finally get that shipment, maybe it's it's earlier in the model cycle. Maybe you get it at the end of 2024 for the 2025 model year. That definitely extends it. Being able to come in and you have the 2025 in 2024, so you have that extension. You have the last few months of 2024 and the whole of 2025 before your car is 1 model year old. So I would say probably for a Civic Type R, given that the depreciated value is still $2,000 more than the MSRP, you could probably get a year and a half out of that thing.
Yeah, that's a great deal.
Yeah.
And I think the C8 Z06 is probably in the same category. Let's talk about this. There's a big price difference between these two cars. And obviously a barrier to driving cars for free is you have to put money up. Like you said, the Civic Type R is starting high 40s. The C8 Z06 can get really expensive.
Yeah.
And
once you spec that thing up, it's what, 150, 160?
Yeah. And again, do you want a convertible?
Yeah.
That's going to be an extra $12K. Do you want the nicest interior? That's going to be over $10,000, depending on if you want the package 2 or package 3. What else is in there? Do you want carbon fiber?
Yeah.
Aero, that's going to be extra. Do you want the track package? That's going to be extra. Maybe you don't need that, but still, even if you don't go all the way, even if you don't build it like I did and you build it all the way up, you're still looking at like $140,000, which is quite expensive. That's a really high monthly payment, especially with interest rates the way they are. It can be a lot of money. So obviously you're going to have to put a lot of money down, or you're going to have to pretty much pay for a good deal of the car in cash. But if you can do that, you will save a lot of money, and you can actually drive one of the best cars on the road today for less than an Audi A4.
No, absolutely. It's ridiculous. You brought up something really interesting about speccing it out and the options and things, because you don't always necessarily have to spec it to the most highest tier to have it retain its value, but it's important to look at the car holistically and create a spec that is desirable.
This is a great point. You cannot walk into a dealership and order a rental base spec car, because it's not going to fetch you the highest price on the aftermarket.
You also can't get every bell and whistle and get it yellow with pink pinstripes, because nobody's going to want that thing.
You've got to be building the car from the beginning in a way that you know the market will respond positively to. So that's a great point. The way that you spec it out has a lot to do with how you want to drive it, but it has a little bit more to do with what you think is going to fetch you the best price when you're done.
And that data's out there, which is crazy. There's a data science aspect to this where you can see most popular colors, specs, options, everything like that for cars sold in the US. It's public data. I know there was an entire site that had the Corvette data up that we were watching nonstop.
Yeah, so back in the day, you would have to just get a vibe.
Yeah, right.
You would just have to go, I saw one down in Mississippi going for this much. This car's pretty, not today. Today, you can go ahead and take, it's hard to scrape AutoTrader, but you can do it. We've done it. You scrape these sites. You can put that data with the options, with the colors, into an Excel sheet. You can take that Excel sheet, you can use GPT to run the data analytics on it, and you can literally have reports showing you exactly which options, which colors are going to fetch you the highest price. And that's the world we're living in today.
Yeah. So that definitely comes in handy, especially for enthusiast cars, because the aftermarket for that is going to be people who want a particular car. They're not going to want just any, like you said, rental spec.
And yeah, just even that, you got to know all these things. You got to know that half of the cars coming out are sold as a convertible.
Yeah.
For the Corvettes. You got to know that a vast majority, I think it's 90+% of the cars are coming out 2LT and 3LT or LZ, depending on what you're building. But yeah, if you got to know that, because when you go to sell your car, you want the buyer who's willing to pay a premium, and so you're gonna have to spec it that way.
Absolutely. What else you got?
So, the next car on my list is the 2020 to 2021 AMG GT.
Interesting.
So, we talked about this car last year, and it's pretty much the exact same price. If you bought this car last year and you drove it for under 5,000 miles, you're selling it today for what you bought it for. And there's a couple of reasons for this. And again, these reasons vary per vehicle, but one great example is that the car went out of production. And so, yes, the new AMG GT is back, but it is for a completely different buyer. It is priced so much higher. And there was a couple year period in there where they made the 4-door coupe. A lot of people didn't like that thing.
The Bean.
Doesn't have the same prestige as the GT, the 2-door. So, yeah, you can get a really good deal on that car. And, this thing is not going to depreciate much more than where it is right now. You can drive this thing for free.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, because this is different. This isn't just getting into a new car at MSRP and then driving it and then selling it because of the demand is so high. This is getting into a car that is depreciated disproportionately to its value.
Yes, and what's really interesting about this car, because anybody can tell you, yeah, go buy a 2000 whatever, and you're gonna get in it and get out of it for what you paid for it. The key here is this beautiful thing called certified pre-owned. It is what I live by. It's what I always say in these videos. It's like, if you can get a car that is certified by the manufacturer and will extend the manufacturer's warranty, in the case of Mercedes, you can pay for extended even beyond that first initial year.
Yeah.
Then you can make sure that if anything happens to the car, you're covered under warranty. We're talking about cost of ownership here. It would be a giant mistake on our end to say, hey, go buy this super expensive cool car that's old and is going to break and cause you tons of problems and be really expensive. Certified pre-owned is the way to go. It'll save you. And so you're playing this little game. How do I get a car that's old enough to where it's lost a lot of value and I'm not going to face a ton of depreciation, but how do I get a car that's new enough to where I can still take advantage of an extended manufacturer warranty?
Absolutely, yeah. That's another thing. I mean, you don't want to keep maintaining this thing, because that's the big point of getting a new car, is there you won't have a maintenance bill. But this is sort of a way to get around that. You get that certified pre-owned and you're still coming in at a price where the depreciation is going to hit you for less than the standard, less than that 10% a year that you can expect buying a new car, and you get to drive something insane. Yeah, that's a great pick.
Yeah, AMG. Also, let's just talk about the car. It's timeless. This is truly a timeless design car. It's 2-door grand coupe kind of thing. It's and I say grand because it's just massive. I don't know if it's a traditional one, but it's super wide. If you haven't seen one in person, it has so much presence.
Yeah.
No one is seeing you pull up in this thing and think to themselves like, oh, that's an old Benz. Nobody.
Yeah, that's where the enthusiast kind of comes into play. Like, if you love a car and you know what makes that car special, then you can sort of do this holistically for yourself. When you see something that has that value, when it has a really good, desirable drivetrain, when it has a beautiful, timeless design, you can be pretty sure that that car is going to hold its value in the aftermarket after that standard 2-3 years of depreciation has already hit it. And yeah, the AMG GT is just the absolute peak of that. It's one of the nicest cars, and loving the car and knowing a lot about it will also help you optimize the one that you find, because you know, I know it might not seem, you know, it might not seem intuitive, but getting one that is flat gray certainly impacts the price.
Oh yeah. So on the AMG GTs, the flat gray will fetch you a few $1,000s more.
The convertible option.
Convertible will fetch you, yeah. That's actually, that could be like almost 10K more. The convertible is a lot more valuable. Here's an interesting one: the tan interior.
Yeah.
The tan interior on that car will fetch you thousands of dollars more than the identical car with the black interior. And again, like Michael said, if you're an enthusiast, like, then you know these things intuitively.
These things, you know, go straight over your head if you don't know anything about the car, if you're just kind of peeking at it. But if you really get into it and you really understand what makes these cars special, you'll know that that brown interior is one of the nicest colors and nicest materials that Mercedes makes. And the fact that you can get it in a supercar, essentially, makes that thing incredible.
Certain wheel options. I mean, yeah, this is a great car. You can pick one up, certified pre-owned. You're getting out of this thing for less than it costs to drive a new 3 Series, and it's just really one of the nicest cars on the road.
All right, I want to pull us back from supercar land again to a lower cost car, but I have a really low cost car for you this time. Do you know what a Corolla Cross is?
No.
A Corolla Cross is the crossover Corolla. It was released maybe a couple years ago. MSRP on that thing is $23,800. They're getting dealer markupped by $15,000 because of how desirable these things are. They are just reliable, incredible on gas, and just a great addition as a daily driver for any family. And because of that, despite the large production numbers, there are even higher demand numbers, meaning that the Corolla Cross at $23,800 MSRP, after a year of depreciation, is still selling for $28,000 at least.
That's a good one, man, because most of the time on this list, we're going to be talking about expensive cars.
Yeah.
So the fact that we've been able to find one here for under 30 grand, this is massive.
Yeah.
This is massive. I mean, this makes a really big difference, because you can come in on this car $28,000 and you can put 10K down.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of money, but you can put 10K down, try and get yourself a really low interest rate with a really low monthly payment. And I mean, you can really drive this car for free.
No, it's absurd. I mean, you're still a year in and 10,000 miles in, $5,000 above water on that. Meaning you can drive this thing for almost 2 years probably, considering the fact that Corollas and Toyotas in general don't depreciate at the standard 10% annual rate that luxury cars do. This thing's going to depreciate closer to like 5% annual. So I think it's absurd. And also because this is such like a low tier car, investors and enthusiasts aren't, you know, stocking up on like the dealer list, trying to get high on the list, trying to put their name down, trying to make sure that they get one of these. If you call a few dealerships, I'm sure somebody can get you an allocation for a Corolla Cross.
Yeah,
just call enough places.
I'm sure. And that's another big thing. Keep calling, because you could literally be in a market where you're calling your dealership and they're telling you, nope, 20 grand, don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And you call a dealership in the next state over, and they're like, yeah, we'll get you one.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got to keep calling dealerships, and you'll find someone who's willing to sell you the car.
Absolutely. The Southeast region's great for that. I hear online all the time, if people have trouble sourcing cars, go for like Georgia, go for Tennessee.
I got my Z06 in Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't know why that region is so good for it, but just take that as a same vein as the Corolla Cross. We don't have to talk too much about it because it's going to be the same strategy, but the Ford Maverick. You come in at $23,400 MSRP for a Ford Maverick. These things are hybrid. These things have incredible gas mileage. It's an incredible utility vehicle for any family. Again, depreciated, you're still getting out of that thing for $26,000. So you're above water for $3 grand after a year and 10,000 miles of driving it, and you get into it for $23,000.
Yeah, that's a great deal.
Yeah.
And again, it's a low budget very small pickup, economy as can be. But again, you drive this thing for free.
Yeah. No. If you go pick this thing up, you get an allocation for it, you pay MSRP for it, you drive it back to that same dealership a year later, they're going to beg you to take it back off your hands for at least what you paid for it.
That's also worth noting here. Like, sometimes the dealers will actually give you quite a good trade-in for a car like that if it's in high demand.
Sometimes before you even drive the thing. Sometimes it arrives on the lot,
Yeah.
you go to pick it up, and they're like, what can we do to just take this thing off your hands right now?
Yeah, that does happen. That does happen. But sometimes it's not the best case, and they're really going to try to rip you off, and you just have to sell private.
Yeah. Yeah, and you are going to have... This is a car, you know, luxury cars, you might have trouble on the private market because, like you said, the number of people who can afford luxury cars right now is going down. The economy is in a tough spot. The Corolla Cross and the Ford Maverick, you are not going to have a single lick of trouble selling that thing on Auto Trader. But yeah, dude, just both $23,000 cars, incredible value. Just to bounce things back up to supercar land, I have a pick which... We haven't talked about this. I think this is a little bit, you know, prospective, but the Audi RS6 Avant is back. If you know anything about the Avant spec of the Audi RS, it's the wagon. It's very popular in Europe. There's so many enthusiasts in the US that import these things. They're incredibly in demand.
What year is the car on your list?
The Audi RS6 Avant, it's brand new. You can get it brand new.
So 2024.
Yeah.
I will say this: it's not conventionally a car that you can drive for free just because of the like mid-tier luxury bracket.
Yeah.
But you're saying that the Avant is? Do you have data behind that?
The Avant. So I found really spotty data because I couldn't find too many of them for sale because it was brought back super recently.
Oh, there's no 2023 of this?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay.
But what I did see was a depreciated one. It was in the same year, so it was a 2024, and they sold it in 2024. It already had like almost 20,000 miles on it because I guess somebody was grand touring this thing. They were selling it for 120 grand. MSRP on it was 126.
So they probably had some options.
They probably had some options. They put a bunch of miles on it, but still it didn't meet that same depreciation mark that you expect to see from a car like this. And what I'm, you know, putting forward is that because the Avant has such a deep and long history as an enthusiast vehicle, that you can really expect this thing to hold its value and to always have a seller for it down the line.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I don't know that this is, and I'm agreeing with you, I don't know that this is one you drive for free, but certainly like a great deal.
Yeah.
Near free. And yeah, this is something interesting because you're looking at an Audi RS6 and you're like, yeah, I want this car.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm gonna go buy this car. Little do you know, you should actually buy the wagon. And you're like, why? I mean, I don't really, it's like, dude, because that is going to have a much higher resale value because enthusiasts like it. It's like, again, being an enthusiast here, like, really helps you save some money. All right, so my last car on the list is the Ford Bronco Heritage Edition.
Okay.
So I've obviously talked about this car a lot, but I think this is something really special, and I think it really gets to like the crux of what we're trying to do here on an episode about driving cars for free. Because you know that the Jeep Wrangler depreciates very slowly. You know that the Ford Bronco depreciates very slowly. But as an enthusiast, being able to know the difference between the trim levels of the different vehicles, you can look at something like the Ford Bronco Heritage. So let's just talk about what that is. If you haven't seen it, it's an homage to the older Broncos, like think like O.J. Simpson era, and honestly, way before. It's like the 60s Broncos that this thing is made after. So it's got like plaid on the seats. Some people like that, some people don't. It's got white wheels, which is the defining factor.
Comes in non-traditional colors like baby blue, like OG 80s styling.
Yep. Now, let me show you something really cool. There's two specific trims of this car. There is the Ford Bronco Heritage Edition, and then there's the Ford Bronco Heritage Edition Limited.
Interesting.
One of those cars is $50K. One of those cars is $70K. The $70K car comes with a few extra bells and whistles, one of them being like a brown leather interior instead of a cloth interior. However, when we look at the Ford, we're talking mass-produced car, mass-produced. Everyone loves the Ford Bronco, right? There are 7 examples of the 4-door model nationwide for sale right now, 2023. 7 of them.
Is the Heritage Limited only a 4-door? Or are you saying you're just looking at the 4-door?
So like, let me show you something. When I look up Ford Bronco, right? I'm going to show you. You can see my screen.
Yeah.
Maybe we can even do a screen capture, something like that. The ones with the white wheels are the cars that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Look at how many cars are not that.
Wow.
They're like even Auto Trader can't even pick them up. It's picking up the limited when it's marketing them as Bronco Heritage when they're not. Those are limiteds.
Interesting.
They're 73, and you'll keep scrolling 73, 73, and then you'll see these. That's the Heritage Edition.
Okay, but a Heritage Edition limited trim
is 20K more, and there's more of them. So if you get the cheaper version, it's more bang for your buck, and also there is none of them. You will literally drive this car for free. 24 example, there's 7 of the 23s as it stands right now nationwide on Auto Trader. There's 4 of the 24s nationwide.
So what's the MSRP compared to what the 2023s are selling at?
In terms of 2023 to 2024?
If you bought a new one and then you drove it for a year,
for free.
Literally the same.
10K miles, exactly what you bought it for. Exactly what you bought it for. This is a prime example of how you drive a car for free. You know that it's going to be super cool. You know that like you just look at it, you're like, okay, there's something special there. But even if you don't think that, you're looking at the supply of the cars.
Yeah.
If you want this, which I love this car, I know people that do, you can't get it.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? It's going to be more expensive. And you can literally buy this thing for MSRP, which a dealer will sell you this car at MSRP, drive it for a year, and sell it for what you bought it for.
That's incredible. That's such a good car to do that with, dude, because nothing's going to happen to it. There's always going to be a seller because it's always going to be in demand. It's just cool in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a great pick.
Yeah, and it really sums up the list. It's like you got supercars, you got trucks, you got economy cars. Like you can do this at any place in the spectrum. I know a lot of people that are very familiar with like, how do I flip Lamborghini Murcielagos? How do I flip Bugattis? It's like, you don't need to be talking about cars in that range. There are ways that you can do this with cars that like are more affordable.
And without a relationship with the dealership.
Without a relationship.
That's another thing people say that you need. They say that you need to keep buying cars from the same guy so that he can get you on a list and make sure that you get one. No, just keep calling. Just keep calling dealerships.
Yep.
You will find an allocation.
You ask someone for a Bronco Heritage, they're going to say, oh yeah, that's a cool car. We'll get you that. Little do they know, you're going to drive this thing. Look at this.
Yeah.
Here's an example. Right now, 2023, 11,000 miles. That is the MSRP of the vehicle. It's going for MSRP today.
Yeah. A year old, 11,000 miles. Literally what would happen to it if you drove it from brand new for a year.
This car's thousands of dollars above MSRP.
Yeah, because it's brand new.
Because it's got 500 miles on it.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, I think the Heritage Edition is a great thing. Anytime a car company releases an edition of the car that calls back to its classical form, that car is always going to be a collector car, and it's usually going to depreciate slower.
And again, it's like just the nuance. Like the $70,000 car that is the higher trim, you think to yourself like, oh, higher trim, nicer leather. But no, because that car's not as good of a deal, and more people are buying it. So you'll find an example of that, $3,000-$4,000 off MSRP. You will not find that of the cheaper car.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's ways to do this, man.
That is awesome. Dude, that is a great list. You have a family sedan, you have a grand touring wagon, you have two supercars. Like,
yep. Mm-hmm.
You have a truck, you have a SUV for off-roading.
Yep. This is the way you drive cars for free.
Dude, I don't want to hear anybody tell me about their $600 a month payment for some luxury car. Do this.
Don't need to face depreciation.
Literally do this.
Drive for free. All right, guys. With that said, thanks for watching.